It's a perfectly legal transaction. It's been vetted by White House counsel, by the Justice Department. There are outside law firms involved. So it's a perfectly legal government to government, Department of Defense to Department of Defense transaction.
Could it color the perception of the administration if they have a $400 million plane to be more in favor of these things? Perhaps. It at least gives the appearance of a conflict of interest. I don't think it's worth the headache, and I think it's detracting from a largely successful trip to the Middle East.
There you have the Trump administration as well as members of Congress weighing in today on that $400 million plane Qatar plans to give President Trump, intended to serve as Air Force One temporarily. Joining me now is Democratic Representative Deborah Ross of North Carolina. She sits on the Ethics and Judiciary Committees and is the vice chair of the Subcommittee on Constitution, Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. We're awfully glad you're here, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. So from an ethics standpoint, is this as legal and proper as Mr. Witkoff is arguing? And how can it be a gift to the Department of Defense and not to the president himself if Donald Trump, after office, plans to take ownership of it after he leaves?
Well, good to be with you. No, it is not legal, and the Amendments Clause of the Constitution. And we have a long history of presidents who have been offered gifts from foreign countries. Many of those presidents have simply turned them down. But the alternative that Donald Trump has is to come to Congress and ask for our approval of this gift. And that has happened in the past. Sometimes Congress has said yes, and sometimes it has said no. The Democrats on the Judiciary Committee have issued a resolution asking the Trump administration to bring this before Congress, because that is what the Constitution requires. But he just wants to accept the gift, create a constitutional conflict, and create this real taint, not just on that trip, but on our relationships in the Middle East. It's just wrong.
Let me ask you, I believe it was Senator Kennedy who made the comparison, or at least asked the question, of what France gave to the United States, the Statue of Liberty, and said, was that legal? I mean, it doesn't feel like a fair one-on-one comparison. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't know all the history about the Statue of Liberty, but that wasn't given to the president. And if Congress thought it was great to have the Statue of Liberty, which I assume Congress would think is a good idea, then that's the process. The key is that there is a process. Our founders set up this process, and President Trump is not beyond the law or the Constitution. He needs to follow the process. If he wants the plane, he has to ask for Congress to agree to accept it.
Okay.
Before you go, you joined President Trump on his Mideast trip, and he's been defending from criticism from both liberals and conservatives to accept this $400 million luxury jet as a gift from Qatar to use for the duration of his presidency. And then, I believe, for his presidential library, Trump says he's giving it to him as a nice gesture. You're a hard-nosed businessman. Even if Qatar isn't asking for anything in return now for the jet, I mean, that's a bill that could come due. Nobody in the Middle East gives things just to, or anywhere in the world, just gives a $400 million jet just to be nice.
Well, I don't know, Jake. The French gave us the Statue of Liberty. The British gave us the Resolute desk. I'm not sure they asked for anything in advance. And the more important airplane deal was there's $100 billion of orders from Qatari Airlines to Boeing. Kelly Ortberg, the CEO of Boeing, was with us in the Middle East. This is the biggest order in the company's history. So, I think that plane deal is much more important than this other one.
Well, I will just say about the Statue of Liberty, I mean, that was authorized by Congress, and it belongs to the American people. It doesn't belong to whoever was president at the time.
Well, I think that this plane would be a gift to the American government.
They're giving it to the United States Air Force / Defense Department of the United States. They're not giving it to me. I made a good deal.
The transaction strikes me as being rife with political espionage, ethical and constitutional problems.
There are those that say we shouldn't be accepting gifts to the Defense Department. And I would say only a stupid person would say that. Why wouldn't we do that?
You're saying President Trump should turn down this plane? I think he should. I think, look, others have observed there are profound issues, the potential for intelligence gathering.
Lingering questions as President Trump forges ahead with a plan to accept a $400 million jet from the government of Qatar solely for his use as an interim upgrade to Air Force One. Joining me now, Virginia Cantor, Chief Counsel for Ethics and Anti-Corruption with State Democracy Defenders Action. She is one of 3 co-authors of a New York Times op-ed headline, "A Plane from Qatar? Come on, man." Virginia, thank you for being with us. You've interpreted rules related to gifts from the presidents from foreign governments when President Clinton was in office. Trump says this plane is not a personal gift to him. He often points to the plane at the Reagan Library as an example, an equivalent one. How do you see it?
Oh, there's no question that this is a personal gift to him and that he intends to use it for his personal use after the presidency. If it were a gift to the United States government, it would have to be accepted on behalf of the U.S. government, and no government official would want the responsibility of tearing apart and rebuilding a $400 million plane from Qatar. You'd have to make sure that, it's completely secure. You'd have to take apart every single, nut and bolt, and you'd have to, tear apart all of the cushionings to make sure there was no listening devices. And, there's no, having been involved in deliberations on whether or not a president can accept a gift, you would only use that authority if it were somehow to be embarrassing to decline. There's no way that anybody would ever expect the president of the United States, which has, one of the most powerful and important images of Air Force One, would ever want to accept a plane from a foreign government.
Trump's crypto activities, another area of concern in your wonderfully titled op-ed. And Thursday, Trump is hosting a dinner at his Virginia Golf Club for the top 220 holders of his Memecoin. 2 analysis by CNBC and Bloomberg found that at least 19 of the top 25 holders are likely non-Americans. A White House spokesperson told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "President Trump only acts in the best interests of the American public." Administration officials previously denied any conflict of interest, saying the Memecoin dinner is an outside business engagement. It is not an official White House event. So, Virginia, what concerns you most about who has bought a seat at the table with Trump?
Well, it's a perfect crypto assets because they lack transparency. It's anonymous financing. They're the perfect vehicle for corruption. And in this case, what's interesting about the Memecoin is by itself, it has absolutely no value. It's a digital image. It's sold, I think, at the outset for $7, and then it went up to $79, and then it crashed. I mean, I think some people estimate the losses of individuals at $2 billion. But it's a perfect way to monetize the presidency, and that seems to be what President Trump has done here. He's providing the top 220 investors personal access to him through a private dinner at one of his local golf clubs. I think he also had offered a VIP reception and White House tour to the top 20 donors. I'm not sure what the status of that is, but it's a perfect vehicle for obtaining access to the president.
I will say, I believe that White House tour, I believe, was withdrawn from the whole package deal. Let me get to, though, another New York Times op-ed in which a public policy professor wrote for Trump, quote, "Shamelessness is a superpower. His scandals are out in the open, and he insists they are not scandals at all. Trump's current administration is explicitly personalist. It is built around loyalty to him, even as he blurs his personal interests and public offices." Virginia, do you agree with that opinion? And if so, what is the impact of this sort of transparency?
So I think that, I think the op-ed makes a very valid point. I think the purpose of transparency is to normalize it. In other words, to make it seem like something everybody does, and we should just accept it as part of our, public life. And it's a very, very dangerous as a result. That's why we have to call it out when we see it. We either have to fight corruption or accede to it. We have to either fight for, what we believe in as part of the values of the United States of America, or we're going to accede to a corrupt state of America. We have legislation now pending. You mentioned the crypto assets. We have legislation pending before Congress now that would establish regulatory frameworks under the Genius Act and Market Structuring Act that do fail to address conflicts of interest. And we have to take this on if we will just accede to a corrupt state.
And budgeting has opened the door for Elon Musk to come in because we haven't done our job. We should be doing this. We should be making these hard decisions.
But do you think that what they've done is okay? The way that Doge has come in and Musk has come in and dealt with USAID, shuttered USAID in particular?
We need to cut. And I talked about over and over again, like we're spending $2 trillion. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have compassion. That doesn't mean when we're letting a federal employee go that we shouldn't be thoughtful about perhaps that's the worst day of their life. And I think that was one of the problems with Doge, is it lacked what people saw as compassion and thoughtfulness. And I do think we need to make cuts. And I think Doge has opened our eyes to some doors that are very problematic. But having run a business, having been mayor, I know this goes over a lot better if you have a dose of compassion when you're doing it.
In this age of politics, and your party, very much the party of Trump, you occupy a unique.
Guys, this jet thing isn't going to go away because it exposes Trump. And this is crazy, but even the MAGA cultists don't like this. Even the Republicans in Congress don't like this because it stretches credibility even for Trump. And so all of these schemes that he's pulling make him look worse than he's ever looked. And it's at a time where his supporters are suffering because of his policies. So, cognitive dissonance is coming in. The mental brain of MAGA is breaking because it's like, oh, Trump promised me no more corruption from the Biden family. Like the Hunter Biden, all the alleged corruption that was, just blown out of proportion to the max. No more of that. Lower prices. And what happens? Well, higher prices, and I'm selling a fake currency, and so is my wife, and we're involved in these weird side projects, and, my son-in-law got $2 billion to do an investment thing, and he wasn't strictly qualified, relative to the kind of people that usually get $2 billion investment portfolio opportunities, and now also I'm getting a jet. And they're just giving it to me to be nice. And MAGA supporters, even they know that's BS. Because they're regular people who live regular lives. They don't live sheltered Trump, silver spoon in their mouth, born in a tower in New York lives. They live no one gives you something for free unless they want something. Because that's the regular reality of the country. And they can smell the BS far away from Trump Tower.